Hello, hello. This is day 313 to 318 of my 365-day raw suspending disbelief journey. This is from March 1st to March 6th of 2025. And actually, in my last episode, I believe I said it was days 306 to 313, but it should have been 306 to 312. And it would have been February 22nd to 28th. So yes, today is 313 to 318 and March 1st to 6th. And this week was really mostly like for the first chunk of the week, I was playing catch up. In my last episode, I talked about how frustrating it was having lost my voice directly after being so sick for so long and the kids being sick for so long and all of these things. And so I was really just playing catch up and at the same time, really receiving that message of like, what do I need to let go and what things do I need to stop doing? Because this always being in catch up mode doesn't work. And this is something that I know very, very well. And I've, been through this cycle before of having added too much to my plate and needing to remove some. And I think I had added an okay amount based on the place that I was in the fall when Casey went to school. But then with her being back and then us being sick and all of that, it just wasn't working. And, um, with this indefinite, like Casey's home from school indefinitely, with the strike and there being no updates as far as how long this is going to go on for. I mean, we're at a month and a half and um, no end in sight, right? So, um, realizing that, okay, this is not just a temporary, pause on things. I'm going to have to actually reset and create a different plan and, um, adjust my life and business based on the circumstances, which is something that I've had to do at every phase. When you have kids, you've got to make changes a lot of the time, every phase that they go through, every different activity that gets scheduled to the calendar, there's always changes happening and that's okay. But it was on a really extreme scale this time. It's really feeling like a lot needs to be cut away and I have to get really brutal with the list and just look at what can go away. And um I'll be honest, I'm recording this way later because for a couple of weeks this was not a priority. This just couldn't be a priority. And I will explain all about that over the next few episodes. I'm going to chunk it up into a few pieces, but this has been a really eye-opening experience of just what I want my business and my life to look like going forward, to be this wide open, flexible thing that doesn't throw off my finances or even our schedules all that much based on external factors like school. So this has been like a dramatic and really over the top shift and really, really deep dive into looking at what I've got on my plate, and what my priorities are. And I mean, I know I've said it on here that I am very deeply coming into this realization of wanting to be more present with my kids and more family focused than ever before. And that is, I'm starting to find actually something that is similar across the board. I've actually had a few people whose email lists I'm on who have either completely shut down their business, like the end, done, or have said, I'm taking an intentional pause and I'm taking steps back. And that has been sort of what I've been doing. So this week, while I was checking off things that I was behind on, I was also crossing off things that I would never have to do in the future because I'm choosing that they're not my priority and they're not on my list. And that's me taking a step back and taking a step back and taking a step back and continuing to take steps back until I can be the mother and provider and homemaker and all of the other things that I want to be, as well as running my business. Now, there's no way in hell that I'm canceling my business, that I'm just closing it. It's not happening. Even if I have to press pause for a while, I'll be back, because I am way too passionate about what I do. I love it way too much, and I will find ways that it can work with life. So, and that's not actually what I'm doing. I'm not pressing pause on my business. I'm not doing any of that. But I did sort of press pause during this week. I didn't add more. I maintained sort of the things that were already being done, and I caught up a little bit on a couple of things. I also made the intentional decision that I'm not going to play catch up anymore. So after this week, it is not going to be that if I get behind, I catch up. I'm just going to pick up where I'm at, because there's too much of this instability and uncertainty when it comes to running a business as a mom. And I'm going to create a business that allows me to just pick up where I left off, so that I have just my sort of bare minimum tasks that are absolute requirements, like delivering for my current clients, right? Um, and serving them at the highest level, and then the rest of it can all just fall away, and I come back and pick up where I left off, and I don't play catch up. I don't try to put out extra posts. I don't try to send multiple emails. I don't try, none of that. Just I will just have the next one ready for when it's due, kind of thing, and just pretend like that time in between didn't happen, because that is the only doable way right now. So all of that was already really deep and a lot of brain capacity to get there. But I had also sent an email to the school about my son. I can't remember now if I have mentioned this in the podcast or not yet in these episodes, but I had, over the holidays, sent an email with some issues that I was having, the things that I was perceiving, the struggles that my son was having, etc., with the school. And I had received, not long after the Christmas holidays, I had received a response, which I felt was sort of blowing it off, sweeping it under the rug, not really helping me. And so I thought about it for a while, and then I discussed it with my ex, actually. And for once in his life, he agreed with me that we thought it would be better to homeschool Jace. And there's a lot of pieces that go into that. And it's actually something that I was really against doing for a really long time, because I just didn't trust in myself. And I chose that I was going to suspend disbelief about this and just say, like, I know I'm smart enough. I know that I can overcome whatever things come up for me. And I know that I can do this. And so I'm going to move forward with this. So I started doing research on that. And it turned out, well, okay, we're halfway through the school year, and the funding for the entire school year for Jace has been designated to the school. So that sort of limited my options. It meant that I couldn't go through the regular homeschooling routes. I couldn't, like, I wouldn't receive funding for that. And I couldn't sign up for a homeschooling program that's already pre-made through the school system, because it was partway through the year. So my options were him doing online schooling, which is totally not for my son. It's sitting at a desk, listening to a teacher from home, versus sitting at a desk listening to a teacher in class and having that social interaction, and so on. And it's being on a screen for more hours, not less, which is completely against what I want for my kids. So that option was like a hell no for me. And the other option was basically unschooling, which is like pulling him out and saying, I'm going to create my own plan for his learning, and we're not going off of the government approved learning curriculum and the school system, and all of that. And while the idea of unschooling and just following what he's interested in appeals to me, I am not here for currently for creating a curriculum whatsoever, not even one assignment, right? Let alone like for the rest of the school year. So I was like, that is really not feeling right for me either. So what I did was I emailed the school at this point, the teacher and the principal, and I just said, I have been seriously considering homeschooling Jace. I wanted to do this effective immediately. And here are the solution or like the options that I found. Am I missing something? Is there a better option? And the principal had emailed me back and just said, can you book a parent teacher interview? They're happening this week, and I'll come into that interview and we can all three sit down together and come up with the best plan for Jace. So I was like, okay. And they did that. Now that happened on the 6th, which is the last day that I'm covering for this episode. That evening I went into the parent teacher interview, and before going in, I called in all the help I could get. I called in all of our higher selves, including Jace's, all of our spirit teams. I asked for the best outcome for everybody. I asked for the support and for the words to get my message across, to help them to understand his needs and so on. Because I really had felt like I was hitting a wall with the school before that point. So I went in, and at first the conversation was kind of frustrating, and it was like we were repeating those old patterns. And then we started coming to better, like more solution oriented focus, which was what I was hoping for. And we almost cut it short at the principal was going to contact the local homeschool and online schooling coordinator and have them get in contact with me so that she could help me find the best option for us at this point. And I was going to move forward with homeschooling. And or online schooling or some sort of a combination thing. And as we were about to wrap up the conversation, all of a sudden it was like light bulb came on, and she just went, actually, there's one more option. And she suggested a half and half schedule so that Jace would still, because one of the biggest concerns with taking Jace out of school was the lack of social engagement, because especially with this potential autism with him, like the interaction is huge and really important, and the area that he struggles most with. So there was that concern of like taking him out, he would lose that social aspect of school. And of course I could intentionally, I have him in sports. I could intentionally set up play dates and things like that so that he still got some interaction, but it's not quite the same. So her suggestion was to have him attend school just in the morning, come pick him up halfway through the day so that he didn't get to the point of being overstimulated by the 6.5 hour long days, right? Sitting in a desk and noisy classroom and all of that. And then taking him home and just doing the rest of the learning at home in the afternoon. And I felt like, yeah, like, okay, this is an improvement. This is a possibility, whatever. And then his teacher actually said, actually, the opposite might work better for Jace. And she was so right. And she was saying, he's often really tired, which is so true. He struggles to fall asleep at night. So he gets to sleep late. And then having to get up early in the morning means he's overtired. So he's starting the school day overtired and then adding in overstimulated. And those two things combined are just rough. So she said, like, that way he can sleep in a little bit. He can have his like sort of slow wake up point to his morning, have his healthy breakfast, all of that stuff. And he can do some of the more basic subjects with you, like math and reading and writing and stuff like that, things that I can easily help him with that aren't project based. They're very task based. So she can just give me that work and tell me exactly what they're working on, and I don't need to plan anything. And so then, and then she also said, that makes it so that he comes in, if you bring him in at the beginning of lunch, he can eat his lunch with his friends, still have that like playing around, goofing off time, go out for recess. And then also the more fun stuff happens in the afternoon. If we have like a community walk that we do that in the afternoon. If there's, we focus on subjects like social and science in the afternoon. So there's more project-based stuff and more activities that he's more interested in. There's like art, there's, just some of the more fun things. And then there's a lot more of the interaction, and they have their special clubs at the end of the day before school ends, and where they get to do like fun activities and all of this. So she's like, he'll get to be part of all the fun parts and still get the social interaction. And the subjects that we work on are a little bit more interactive, and I would need to give you a lot more material and a lot more guidance versus the math and reading. And I was like, oh my gosh, this works so perfectly. That it kind of checks all the boxes. He still gets school, but he does some of it at home with me. He has those slower mornings so he can get enough sleep. He won't have as many hours a day at the school getting overstimulated by the noise. there was so many boxes checked off by it. I was like, this sounds really perfect. So we decided we would go ahead with that. And as of April 1st, so after spring break is the last week of March, here is spring break for our kids. After spring break, he will just be on half days. So he will be at home with me every morning and at school every afternoon, which for him, it was the perfect solution. The only box it didn't check was for me and my business. And at this point, it was just like, that doesn't matter because his needs are not being met at school right now, the way that things stand. So that needed to happen. And so I was more than okay with it, but I was also like, I was ecstatic actually with the solution that we came up with, but I was also stressed. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And of course, Casey's still home full time too. So she's at home with me all day. He's going to be home with me all morning. This is like, I'm going to have to work with her home, and it's going to have to be in the afternoons when he's not there because he's very distracting. And usually, because she was in morning classes, I did all my work in the mornings and then we hung out in the afternoons. So I'm like, now this is a complete flip around in my schedule. Doable, but it takes time and effort and so on. So um, it was really good, really exciting, but also after I put the kids in bed, I basically had a complete mental breakdown and just sobbed my eyes out and was like, oh my gosh, I am so stressed. This is a lot to add to my plate. And I'm, business, I have not been able to focus on business for like a month and a half, almost 2 months. And it's just like, I'm feeling very behind with it. And even though I'm making these decisions of things to let go of, like, it's just not enough, and just really feeling like overwhelmed with it all. And I was just voicing it out to a friend of mine in a voice note and crying and crying and crying. And when I finally had sort of released all of that and cried it out and was just sitting there, like coming back into myself and like taking deep breaths and whatever, Cadence, my oldest, decided to come upstairs and share some really hard stuff with me. And I'm first off so grateful that she did, but I also I had already had my mental breakdown, and then she brought more to the table. So it was a rough night. And it was enough that I didn't even think about doing this podcast for over a week after that, because I was like, I was in action mode. First of all, I was very much like, we're taking action, we're moving, we're getting things set up. She was having some mental health struggles, so it was get her into therapy and get to a doctor and get to, and just started like creating a new list of to-do items that were completely separate from the business list, and from the regular family list, and even from the advocating for Jace at school list, and even from the having Casey home 24/7 list. So it was, it was mind-bogglingly big. And of course, this was the sort of the breakdown before the breakthrough, right? This was the night of like, everything went wrong that could go wrong. Everything fell apart so that it could get put back together. And that it was leading up to, like, we're in eclipse season. And for any of you who listen to this who know, like, energy wise, eclipse seasons are very fraught with like things coming up to be let go of, because we're having massive transformations. So I knew this, but I also was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. So that was where that night left off. Was just, I mean, I comforted her, I took care of her, I took stock of her needs, and I figured out what needed to be done so that I could move forward the next day. But up until this point, it was just very like a whirlwind of a lot of information that night and a lot of emotional processing for me. So that's what I'm going to share with you in this episode. And I'm going to come back for another chunk of time in the next one and catch you guys all up. I have not forgotten about this. I actually still have previous ones to this that I haven't even posted. So they'll be coming out staggered in the next week or so, which is actually like mid-March when I'm recording this. So just they've been recorded for a while. There's been some that have been sitting there, or at least one that's been sitting there. And then now I'm going to be recording some more and getting these caught up. This is the only thing I'm catching up because it's very time specific, very date specific. And I'm deciding whether I want to continue after the 365 days because I'm coming really close up to this deadline here. So, anyways, that's what I have to share with you guys today. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.